getting started with a discussion of ball flight. Darren had some questions about that and wanted some clarification about TrackMan and how we use it for ball flight and how sometimes things can be a little confusing. I would say the biggest, most confusing thing that I didn't understand when I first started learning TrackMan was swing direction and path. I was like, that seems like that's the same thing. Would you agree, Darren?
Yeah, and that wasn't always something that I would look at if I was on TrackMan or reading numbers online.
So the swing direction is just basically exactly what it says. It's where the club is swinging in relationship to the target that you set up. So if it's a plus number, let's say it's a +6, that means you're swinging 6 degrees out to the right. Now, the path, the reason it's a little confusing, you could be swinging 6 degrees in to out, and if you hit up on it, let's say 5 degrees, you could be very close to a 0 path. So that's where people get confused. Or if you have somebody that's swinging really far into out or out to in, they might have a 5 degrees swing direction to the left for a right-hander, and they hit down on it 6 or 7 degrees, and they can have a 0 path. So that's where a lot of people get a little bit confused, because it's two items put together. It's the angle of attack and your swing direction gives you your actual path. So it's the combination of those two that actually gives you the path. And that's the D plane that has been talked about for the last several years, but more and more people are starting to understand that a little bit better.
Andrew?
Yes.
Can you explain when McElroy said the other day, I hit fades from a closed face position and draws from an open face position? Can you explain to everybody like what exactly he means by that?
Say that again. You said he hits fades with a closed face position and draws from open face?
Right.
Okay, yeah. So as most of you guys know, most of your shut face players out there, like DJ would be a good example. He's a very shut face player, shut throughout the whole swing, but he hits cuts. Then you have Webb Simpson on the other side of the spectrum, very open face player, or Ernie Els. It's draws. So for him, I'm not sure how he does it, Jeff, but obviously he's controlling his club face at some point during either setup or during the swing to create a more shut face, which for him probably gets him swinging more to the left, and a more open face that helps him swing a little more into out, would be my guess. I didn't see that particular video or discussion.
He did this clinic with Brandel Chambly, been on the Golf Channel. And of course, Chambly the entire time, oh, I can't hit it nowhere, man. You hit it like, you hit your 2-iron further than I do my driver, about 30 yards. The whole time whining and bitching and complaining. But then Rory started talking about that and how he learned he could hit, a fade from a closed face and draws from an open face, and how he uses that. Like if he wants to hit a big high draw, he'll open the face actually and swing from that position. Which, that sounds extremely logical, but like you go back to the ball flight laws, the original ball flight laws, Dr. Gary Wyron's ball flight laws, they might not tell you that, So if you all you ever studied in your life was the PGA teaching manual, that might not work.
Oh, totally agree. Because when you hear closed face and you hear fade, that doesn't compute if you don't know enough about kind of how things are working and the dynamics of impact. Because most people would say, oh, closed face, that would be more of a draw pattern. Well, you could hit a full hook, right? If you come into impact and your face is way left and closed. But if your path's anywhere to the left of that and your face is closed, that's going to be a bad combination.
Right.
Most players are not anywhere near any of those type of conditions. So, but it is pretty interesting to think that how much impact or angle of attack changed the actual path of what the ball start direction is. I think that's pretty fascinating. So the D plane, whoever figured that out, pretty genius. Because, you know, like Jeff, you and I have watched guys hit balls on the range. It looks like they're swinging way left and they're just shooting it right at the target.
Yeah.
And we're like, how is that happening? You know, this is before I knew anything about D plane, and it makes a lot of sense now.
For sure. Remember that guy at the Masters we were watching? It was so like
Grillo?
Who was it?
Emilio Grillo, or no? It was the other guy.
That Swedish guy.
Noren.
Noren.
Oh, Noren, he
fun.
was whatever he was doing,
was
man. It was
funky, man.
funky.
Did anybody see on Facebook like a week ago? I think Bob Grissett put on there. They had side by side with Noren and Mac O'Grady, and I'm like, Noren don't look nothing like Mac O'Grady. His hands are so far ahead, like, you know, like he's trying to, like, I don't even know what he was trying to do. I'll never forget that. As long he looked like a fucking 35 handicap out on that range. Excuse my language, children out there.
He looked possessed with his practice, didn't he?
It was awful, man.
It was like the complete opposite. Him and the other guy we saw.
Grillo?
Yeah, Grillo. He was wide open and at the top.
He was wide open, and he was hitting it all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
He'd fan it open, and he'd try to catch it with his hands, and he had no rhythm. You can see how nervous he was, even in a practice round.
He still played pretty good.
Yeah,
he held it together better than we were thinking, didn't he, Jeff?
Oh yeah, I was thinking he
And
wouldn't
he's like,
break
I'll bet you $100 he doesn't break 80.
But getting back to your point, Darren, if you want to keep it real simple on the D plane, the more down you hit on the ball for a right-hander, the more the path is shifting to the right. The more you hit up on a ball, like say you're hitting a driver, or a lot of our juniors hit up on a lot of their irons. The more up you hit on a ball for a right-hander, the more it's going to shift the path more to the left. So that's the basic concept of it if you really dumb it down.
And it's nice because the TrackMan's spitting that number right out at you, right? It's automatically doing that.
Because I always try to guess what a TrackMan's going to say before it says it, and see how close I get. It's kind of a little game I kind of play with myself. And surprising, you start to get somewhat close, but you're not always right. But it's a good way to try to pick up what they're doing, I guess.
Yeah.
So when you don't have the TrackMan,
the target line is really important too, right? I mean, that can be a pitfall of the TrackMan. If you're not truly hitting it towards that selected target, then your numbers aren't valid.
Correct. You're faking TrackMan. Like I had a guy that typically aims way right, and I had the sticks down, I had his target, had TrackMan set up, and he was just super closed, and it was saying he was actually swinging a plus path, but he was actually about a -10. That's how closed he was.
Yeah.
So yeah, if
he's aiming right and his swing path's right, but the face is closed. Is that what we're looking at there, Andrew?
Yeah, for him, he was a typical over-the-top pull slicer. So, but he was aiming about a good 40 to 50 yards right of where we had TrackMan set up. So even though he was coming over the plane, he was still swinging a little right of where the target was. So swing direct. Yeah, so that can shut that. Obviously, you got to keep an eye on that, Darren. So like you said, you could cheat TrackMan and make it look like you're doing something, but you're not. But usually if you start seeing face to path ratios and you see some really major face conditions that are wide open to the path, then that's telling you something's not set up correctly. So most of the time you'll catch that pretty quick though.
In
Chase,
that
you had a.
instance with him, would you even use the TrackMan until you got alignment worked on?
I wouldn't tell him any of the numbers for sure. I would,
Okay.
if he asked me, I'd say, wait, we're not gonna look at any TrackMan numbers until we get you calibrated and set up correctly, so we can have actual true data of what's going on with your swing.
What were you gonna
Right.
say, Jordan?
You had a fitting the other day where one of your students was a little right at address compared to the TrackMan and got some positive numbers.
Yeah.
So
So he was aimed quite a bit right, and he was on the foresight, which is supposed to be better indoors apparently than the track. And he was probably aimed 20 to 30 yards right, and he was chicken winging the hell out of it, and it only came out to about 3 degrees out to in. And I was like, there's no way. And sometimes it was in and out, and I'm like, there's no way. So I checked his alignment, and obviously he was right, but his real numbers were probably 6 to 7 to 8 out to in. It was phenomenal how much he was aimed to the right to adjust his numbers with the track, or the foresight, I guess. So
foresight, they put the little nodes still on the clubs.
yeah, they do, Jordan. It's like, I mean, I wasn't a fan of it, but foresight swears by being more accurate indoor. Apparently, I've heard that a few times from a few different people. But how often are you hitting balls indoors, right?
Well, I know I heard Martin Hall talk about. He said foresight. He puts TrackMan and foresight side by side. He uses both of them,
Right.
and he said he found that foresight. I don't know how he figured it out, but he said that foresight was better with what the club was doing,
Mm-hmm.
and TrackMan was a little better with what the ball was doing. That's what his opinion was.
He had them both going for every student at the same time.
So I think that's pretty interesting.
Well, I prefer the ball, because what are we trying to get closer to the hole, right?
The ball.
Yes, exactly. So
Swings don't have to be perfect.
right.
Do you guys utilize the what would you say you guys use? What numbers do you look at the most on TrackMan if you're watching a particular lesson? Are there certain numbers you always are looking at, or does it change depending on the lesson? Is there a certain few numbers that you like to kind of have in order on the, because you can move them around where you want them on TrackMan? What do you guys typically use, Bobby and Jeff?
I'd say for me, path, and I like swing rate. I want to know how much the ball's spinning. I mean, you know, like smash factors. You know, I want to know that. But I'm mainly interested in where the path is. If we can, you know, if I can grab it, where's the path going? You know, what's that correlating to what the swing looks like, and so forth and so on.
Yeah, Bobby, what about you? Do you use the TrackMan often?
Not as much as Jeffrey did. Got to start using it more. But how often do you look at how steep or shallow they are on their irons and stuff like that? Is that one of the things you look at?
Yeah, I would say my main numbers that I have at the top is club head speed, ball speed. That's at the top. Then attack angle, swing direction, club path, face to path, and then carry in total. Those would be the ones I'm probably looking at the most. But obviously, spin rate would be something I'd be pretty highly interested in with like driver or something like that. But something I'm looking at a lot more here recently. Low point's always good, but dynamic loft and spin loft are two things that I've been watching a little bit closer, which I feel has helped me with less curvature to the ball. But there's so many different things you can put on there. But for me, I probably use about 8 of them on a pretty regular basis. But I don't typically like to show the student all the information unless, okay, today we're going to work on path. We're just going to look at that number. That's the only thing we're going to be worried about. Let's forget about everything else. You were -7 end of the lesson. Look at that. We're +1. So they're like, whoa, that's cool. So, and usually when that path changes, it changes all the other numbers. So that's kind of the cool part about it, using it, because you can kind of see how it's a progression.
Draw.
Exactly. Now,
Well, I
did you
think that's
guys? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Chase.
yeah. So I think that's the beauty of TrackMan and all these things is like some students can leave there and be like, well, Andy, how did you make me better today? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And you can quantify it. That's the beauty of all this stuff is like, well, I can show you how I made you better. Right. You just show them their figures and you're like, well, this is how you zeroed it out a lot better. And you just show them the figures and they're like, oh, okay, I get it now.
Yeah, it's just
It's cool.
basically giving you more credit. That's it.
Right. Right.
It's less opinion. It's actually data, and they're like, okay, it's not a BS. But the thing
Right.
is before we had this, if you had somebody that was slicing it and now they're drawing it,
And
the
they're
ball
happy.
flight told them everything that TrackMan said, but it's
For sure.
it's just a little bit different. It's a little more
I think it's better for better players,
data.
right?
Well,
Yeah,
ball flight change is the goal of any lesson. Well, unless you got somebody who's really striping it and you're just trying to tighten up their aim or something like that. But if you got a junior or a 20 handicap, I mean, you're looking to change their ball flight if you can.
absolutely.
I mean, that's that would be the key to any lesson is ball flight change. If you can't create ball flight change, I mean, unless they're good, unless they're a plus handicap, and you don't want to. You got to be working towards that ball flight change, or towards something they want.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, Jeff. Because if you're not changing ball flight, you're probably not keeping them as a student, especially if they're struggling with
Probably
slicing
not.
or hooking it, right? So you'll probably get fired pretty quick if you don't have at least some kind of prescription to get them moving in the right direction.
Right.
Another thing, Darren, and the TrackMan that I know you have a lot of good players, and for my wedge play has really helped me understand the attack angle from good players tends to be a lot more shallow than I thought, and their spin rate is crazy high when they have that more of a shallow kind of riding the ground type of strike to the ball. And also the more they, like, I don't know if you saw Jason Duffner try to hit a low spinning wedge shot. He opens his body, he closes the face, and he swings just a little into out, and he can get his spin rates up to 10,000 RPMs in a pretty small shot. So, like Andrew Rice talked about, swinging a little more end to out creates more friction on the face. That's stuff I didn't know before TrackMan. So it's stuff like that you're starting to pay attention to some of these details of what makes these good players and how they're able to do things that other players can't do or just haven't learned how to do.
Yeah, I remember like when Phil Mickelson was on 30 and he was describing all of his different shots he hits around the green. I mean, it was so detailed and like how much he's gripping down on the club, how much he's taking it back, if he's a little in to out, the club face is open or his hands are forward. I mean, he's got 100 of different combinations of things that he can throw out for any type of shot, and he knows how it's going to react.
And which is amazing because he's probably got, if he's got, let's say he's got a 30-yard shot, he's got 10 yards of green to work with, he's probably got 20 different ways he can hit that shot.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing to think that way,
And 10 different places he can hit it on the club face to hit the shot too. I mean,
exactly.
And how do you think you learned all that? You think that was more him feel and practice?
Yeah, just exploring.
Yeah.
And like Mickelson and some of the other guys talk about, when they use the bounce, they tend to hit the ball lower. Obviously, lower on the face is going to launch it lower. But they hit it a little bit more on the toe, which deadens the blow a little bit.
Yep.
And gets you more of that 1-to-1 ratio. That's another thing. The smash factor has been really helpful in wedges because the players that have too much shaft lane with those little shots, they have too much smash factor. So it's hard to control the speed of the ball.
Yeah.
And what I found is the good players tend to obviously use the bounce and it comes off softer. It's closer to a 1-to-1 ratio. So like if they're swinging 40 miles an hour, the ball's going 40 yards. Type of deal.
Okay.
Does that make
What kind
sense?
of
So
smash? What kind of smash number do you like to see for that? Like 1-3?
actually, like on a small little pitch shot, like 30 yards, you'd want to see the ball speed and the club head speed matching. So that would be a 1-to-1 ratio. Versus like when we're trying to smash a ball and hit it hard, we're going to try to get it up as high as we can to 1.5, but that's typically only going to be a driver 3-wood if you have really good speed. So that 1-to-1 ratio is something that I've noticed with good players. They're much closer to that 1-to-1 pitches from 30, 50, 40, 20. Sometimes even up.
Because they're using the bounce.
Using the bounce. And some of them even will get that 1-to-1 ratio at 80 yards, but they're using a very, very less lofted type of club to do it.
That
Like
makes sense.
They might use a 9-iron or whatever to hit that shot.
That makes sense because you have to have a good tempo and rhythm to use the bounce.
Exactly. But you can see why if you had your club head speed going at 30 miles an hour and you hit it correctly, it's going to come off at the same speed. That's how you can start controlling your distance versus if you catch one and you're going 30 and it jumps off at 40, it's hard to control feel-wise what the ball is going to do and how far it's going to go.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I know one thing, kind of moving on from that, one thing Jeff wanted to talk about was the flat left wrist. I believe you meant at impact. Right,
I did.
Jeff?
I do. I mean,
I know that's – no, go ahead.
Well, I just want to, maybe talk about it and talk in the ideas with you that is that something that most people that you're working with, are they able to do that? Is physical limitations to that, and can they hold that position, at impact? So in other words, like, is a tendency like to collapse or have it kind of break down there? I know with ladies, it's kind of difficult for them to hold that position because they don't sometimes have the muscles in their arms to be able to do it like a guy will. And I'm not saying that to be sexist. I'm just saying that because it's the truth.
It's a lot of speed coming down through impact to try to handle that force. I know I saw some research that if you're swinging 100 miles an hour, you've got to create over 120 pounds of pull force in your left arm to be able to maintain those angles. That's a lot of strength to try to hold. I think some people, I mean, they're gonna have issues with the lead wrist and how much they can radial deviate. So I'm a little limited on my left side compared to my right. I can do that much more readily. So what we'll tend to see with players, instead of radial deviating and setting that wrist flatter at the top, they'll extend it as a compensation, which creates a lot of issues for you guys in terms of club position, club face position, and then they've got to do something on the way down to get the club face back into a decent spot.
So just to be clear, this is ulnar deviation and this is radial, correct?
Yeah. Pinky
Ulnar.
down is ulnar, and thumb up is radial.
Okay.
Under ulnar, that's how I remember it.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
I called this the wrong thing for a little while with Chase. I was like, "Come on, man, we need some radial, baby. We need some radial."
And one or the other.
And I was like, "No, Chase, that's not what it's called. It's ulnar, baby. It's ulnar." So I
So-
finally figured that one out.
No wonder
Yeah,
the
if
poor
you're-
kid couldn't hit it high enough on tour. Come on.
Exactly. Thanks a lot, Andy.
No, we talked about that in putting. Never in a swing.
Who's this, Chase?
Yeah.
Is that DJ?
Now, a good question for you, Darren. Obviously, players can't get their hands into that good player position unless they get their so maybe I can describe this. When the club gets parallel to the ground in the downswing,
Yeah.
the only players that will get the shaft to lean is when that arrives parallel to the ground, their hands have to be closer to their trail leg. All right.
Yeah.
That's really the only way I've seen people that can create shaft lean, unless they had the ball extremely back in their stance, which would cause some other issues. But most players at that position, when that club gets parallel to the ground on the downswing, their hands are behind their hips and their body. So there's no way they're going to have enough time to maneuver their whole hands and arms to get them in front.
Hey, Andy.
Yeah, a lot of it starts. No, sorry. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, is there so when shaft lean occurs at impact, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there more ulnar or radial? It's more ulnar, correct?
I would say, because you know how the shaft, as it's coming into the ball,
A little
tends
higher.
to kind of go this way a little bit, because
Yes.
obviously there's a lot of forces on the weight of that club. So I would guess the wrist
More
got to
ulnar?
be doing a little bit of this through impact,
it's compared to a setup, yeah.
Because Woodland here looks like he has a little bit of radial. It's weird.
I'm sure it's different for.
it's
It'd be
hard to
hard
see
to
from a
tell-
head. It's
hard to
hard
tell
to see
from
from
that
a
angle.
head-on angle.
Right. It's for
And
sure.
it might vary on the club.
It'd probably be more indicative from the down the line, eh?
Yeah, for sure.
It's like, damn.
I think a lot of it starts with, like, I have this guy he's got limited shoulder external rotation. He was getting it long. So we worked on chest, we worked on rotator cuff, getting that a bit more balanced out so he could get further back. But when he was getting long, his shoulder rotation would push him this way. So his hands lead wrist would extend because his trail shoulder was in this position compared to maybe something a little more external.
Well, as
Um,
that elbow flares, the lead wrist cups, right? The trail elbow, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, or
Right.
the hands are gonna raise. I mean, it
Yeah,
doesn't
Right.
have to.
because their chest ain't turning anymore.
Such a common freaking position, man. It's crazy.
It's
Yeah,
because
I
a
mean-
lot of people can't get to 90 with that shoulder. I mean,
Yeah,
that
that's a shame. That's a
shoulder's-
shame. They're like,
The right shoulder is important.
So would you
Right.
say path? If the path was out to in, it's going to be a lot harder to keep that shaft on that flat left wrist because they're dumping everything there and getting that elbow flying. It's hard for them to hold that angle and that if they're going from way out to in. Would you agree with the
Oh.
path there?
Yeah, if they're casting
They're a hold, right?
and they're over the plane and they've rotated their chest early, that they're done.
So
I mean,
you would say under the plane.
They could actually line up the shaft in the hands fairly good, but their path's going so far left
Right. Yeah.
that they're gonna have to
Elbow.
chicken wing
chicken wing
or
the shit out of it.
fall away or pull away, trying to shallow it out in some form.
So
That's when they. Go ahead, Bobby.
So if you're teaching somebody to get a flat left wrist, you'd probably start, if they were maybe a little over, start them getting in to out, getting that feel of that extension of those arms, getting more out that way and getting that lead wrist to flatten.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing when you get somebody that's, typically over the top.
Mhm.
Obviously, like Darren said, their top position is usually pretty poor. It's usually inside, across, arms rising, and then the chest starts to bury.
Yeah.
And it goes. And if you shut them down to the target and you make them make a swing to their waist high and keep the club low, their wrist conditions are 1,000% better. And then
They're able to
change
control that low point
Yeah.
a lot better.
and then change of direction is going to be way easier because now they actually have the chance to swing even a little to the right of the target if you wanted them to for a right-hander.
Now, what would you do if someone's way under the plane and they're not getting that left to flatten?
So if they're way dumped under,
Mhm.
Are you saying, are they a late dumper or are they early or under?
So
Late
so
under.
they're flat and they're just go under.
Okay, so they're under the whole way.
Yeah.
So I would, if that would
Just
be
get 'em.
somebody that's more than likely swinging excessively into out unless they're flicking real early to change their path. But let's just say they're swinging 10 right or something like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, they can't be very steep from there. They're going to be probably hitting up on it with their irons. So my first thing I'd say, hey, let's make some divots, boy. Let's make some divots. And
Would you look
maybe
at wrist position?
And I'd probably get them steeper on the backswing. Try to. Maybe even move their weight towards the target, keep their weight towards the target. Basically, just move the opposite direction of where they were. Because if you can get their hands more in front of their body on the backswing, they could probably keep them there a little bit better versus sucking it back, back under their body. But typically, the people that are really dumped under are big-time sliders with their hips.
Yeah.
Their hip girdle is the only thing really moving, and the upper body's kind of falling away.
And then they fall back.
It's a good question. Darren, another question for you. For all of my students that, let's just say they don't have very good extension of their wrist, and they also are limited on their 90, this is what I found works better for them, because typically they're gonna do this to stay away from both of those at the top, right?
Right.
So obviously that leads to a kind of a narrow, very flat trail wrist. So typically what I'll do is I will try to create a much flatter hand path, which allows the arms to still do what they feel comfortable doing, but it puts their arm playing in a flatter position where they can, get some speed back to the ball. At least that's what's worked for me. I don't know if that's what I should be doing, or
would that get them more on plane too?
From my perspective, it has, but I'm basically staying away from kind of what they can't do, right? In a different way.
They'd obviously have to be a little shorter than maybe even what they're trying to get. I think that's the biggest thing that I see is people are trying to move beyond, well past where they can actually move, and that just forces the shoulder to go that way. That wrist starts to break down. Usually they're getting out of range of that right shoulder, and then they lose that side bend in the backswing, and then the shoulders just get too flat. So they've got to make some type of compensation on the way down. So if you can avoid that, make them a bit more compact, even, then it simplifies that move, and they don't have to make this massive compensation coming back down.
Yeah, I see that almost as soon as I tell them we're taking a hand path that's a little more with the turn or a little flatter, they instantly get shorter with their overall length. But to them, they're like, dude, that feels like a half backswing. And I'm like, well, that's where we want your top of your swing to be.
Yeah, that's where you need to be.
That's where I call it the power slot for you, because that's where you're going to get your most speed. And this is where you're losing all of it.
Speed and consistency.
But
I like Tony Finau and trying to think the other one. John Rahm. I think of them. So like when people are saying, well, I want to hit it further, but I can't move, and like, here's two guys that are on the top of the tour that make it work. I mean, it's not impossible to do it. We just got to make sure that other areas are moving well, because that one's not, and it might not get better.
Both of those guys have tremendous internal hip rotation. And if you notice,
they separate well too.
Yeah, if you notice an impact, especially with Finau, and both feet are basically flat. You know, he's turned his hips in and his feet are flat to the ground. He doesn't really have any kind of like right foot kind of kicking up.
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't you say that both those players, Darren, their rate of their hip speed and rotation and the transition has to be faster than everybody else's in order for that to work?
I think John Rahm just starts earlier, so he creates this load, and then his hips are already turning towards the target before that club hits the top.
You ever seen that guy's legs? I mean,
he's a tree trunk.
Massive.
He's a beast.
You got to ass like J-Lo.
Yeah.
I mean, there's these certain physical attributes that match up with them. I mean, obviously they're different body types and probably
Finau was
different
a tremendous athlete.
too. Yeah.
Finau was almost NBA level basketball player. I mean, he's, you can, and to put that into a golfer, that's, he's got that ability just to stand there flat footed and hit it 360. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah. That was amazing when he injured his ankle the way he did and finished top 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no clue how the heck he did that. That
He
was
had to
unbelievable.
He had
Probably
to have
lots of
before.
morphine and a good brace.
He had to dislocate that before because he popped
for
it back
sure.
in so easy.
Oh yeah, well, he's, like I said, he's a basketball player, so he was he's probably dislocated that number of times.
If it was his first time doing it, I don't think he would have been able to play in the tournament.
Yeah.
Well, he popped it right back in and started walking. I was like, "What are you doing?
Picked up his
What is
kids.
going on?" I got one for you, Darren. 2 words: tempo and rhythm. When it comes to working out your players, do you find that rhythm is the major thing that you work on when you're trying to create a good swing speed that matches on both sides, or are you looking more at the pace and how fast they're swinging and the tempo?
Yeah, I mean, there's certain things that we do in the gym that we want our lengthening time, or we can match up with golf, the backswing to be longer than the downswing or the shortening phase. So usually we'll go like a 3-to-1 ratio. So if you're going through a squat, you're going down in 3 seconds and up in 1. So that kind of eliminates if you do a lot of strength training, you just get slow. You can get big, but the speed diminishes unless you're doing some power training as well. So you got to have that match a bit. So if you can simulate what you're doing in the gym to match the demands of golf, and timing, tempo is all kind of the same thing, then you'll be more successful.
Yeah, because like you might have a player like Freddie Couples who has kind of slow tempo versus Nick Price who's got fast tempo, but they both have great rhythm. Do you see that in their workouts? Do you see their swing rhythm match how they work out and how they move their body, or is it completely different?
Yeah, I think that's characteristic of the player too. Like if you have a Bubba Watson in the gym, you're gonna have to give him different things to work on. He's not gonna be a guy that's gonna sit there and do 3 reps of this, 4 sets of that. He's gonna want to be kind of constantly challenged and doing different things. Where you take someone that's maybe a little bit more methodical, and they can stick to that program a little bit better. Chase asked this last time. He was referencing the fast backswing. I watched that video again with
Sasha.
Yeah, with Sasha and Cordy.
The guy's a wizard, man.
Yeah, and
He's
basically what
wild,
he
right?
said is more. The faster you're going back, you have to put more work on the handle to get it moving back in the opposite direction. So if you're going slow in the backswing, then you don't have to create as much work in transition to get that handle moving back towards the ball. So faster coming back takes more effort. If you do that faster, then the club head speed will jump up. So I think Cordy picked up maybe 5 or 6 miles an hour there in just a couple minutes.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty interesting topic right there. That if you were to put Ernie Els, who's got a smooth swing, against your 25 handicap that's struggling, Ernie Els would be already at impact by the time that your guy got it to the top of his swing.
Right. Exactly right.
So, and then he said,
Big
"Oh, I
easy,
chunked
baby.
it. I chunked it. I need to slow my swing down. I'm just getting a little jumpy. I'm getting a little jumpy."
Which is
And the
bad news, Bears.
And then the reason he's so jumpy is because he's so slow on the backswing that he has to get going in the other direction with excessive change of direction. So
It's
I think
just
a lot
too
of
much
people
change of
misinterpret
direction.
that.
Speed
Right.
rush, right?
Exactly.
It's a, it's just too much, man.
It's like a person that has that slow backswing with their putting, and then
Yeah.
try to make up for it on the follow through. They're going
Like
to be
low and slow, man. That's what I mean.
low and slow.
Low and slow. Let's go to
I'm chunking it. I feel quick.
Yeah, low and slow, man. Yeah.
I think that's
It's like
sometimes
so freaking annoying. I hate hearing that.
some bad advice that they get from their buddies. Just slow it down, man. Low and slow. You'll be good. You'll be good.
Keep your head down.
It's the worst.
down.
But I don't know if I'm sure that they've measured how long it takes tour players. I think I heard it takes them around a second to complete a swing, and like Darren said, it's a 3-to-1 ratio for most of them, which is pretty cool. That it's that uniform. But I'm sure there's players out there that have a little slightly different.
It's crazy when we were at Augusta. When you're looking down the line, man, it doesn't look like they're swinging hard at all.
No,
None of them.
they all have such good rhythm. Man.
Kepka or JT, they don't look like they're swinging hard.
Bobby, who's the most impressive golfer you've seen hit balls? On the range, you're like,
it was
whoa.
Kepka.
Kepka was?
Yeah, it was just like effortless, like just getting it out there, like. And
Jordan, you?
Oh man, that's a good one. Believe it or not, he's not on the PGA Tour anymore, but Jeff Sluman, I watched him hit balls, and it was like watching a machine. Just another ball, just so much the same every time.
Couples wedges on at Augusta was freaking fun to watch too. That was good.
Yeah, his swing is so interesting and cool. How he worked everything out.
Thing's sick. Have you guys seen Charlie Howell?
Charlie Howell's a machine. Oh, Azinger. I was gonna say Azinger. Azinger had a whole different sound to his ball and kind of almost hit a dead straight ball.
Really?
Kind of a low straight ball that was a machine. He looked like a machine. Charlie Howell, definitely more of a machine as well.
Whoa,
You think
dude. That guy is nuts.
You wonder how that guy hasn't won more.
How the hell has he not won more?
His
all health, right?
God, I mean, he is one of the best ball strikers I've ever seen in person.
He gets so many top tens. Didn't he have a health problem a couple of years ago?
I'm not sure. Hey, I think you're right though, Bobby. I think he did have some type of health issues that kept him from practicing and playing for a little bit of a long time.
And then he came back and he's been pretty good. He's won, I think, maybe once, and he's got a lot of top tens.
Top 10 machine though, right? Like it's like
he's a drafting warrior.
Yeah, he is. He's $7,700 every week. You just slot him in there.
He's gonna make a cut.
Yeah, he's like a poor man's Kuchar almost, right?
You know, Azinger was a shut face position, strong grip, short backswing. You know, and he hit the ball about 20 feet in the air with every club. But he did strike it better than just about anybody when he was at the top of his game.
Yeah, Jeff, I think we watched him hit balls once at the Masters, or I can't remember where we saw him, but I just remember us watching him and just being like, "What? This guy is sick."
Did he hit any balls when he was the captain for the Ryder Cup?
No.
Because that Valhalla is when he was there, right?
But he's a good story. He's a good story.
That's right, Bobby.
He's a good story for your juniors. You know, he basically walked on at Florida State. He wasn't even the number one player on his high school team, and really developed towards his senior year in college, and then
kind of like
Koepka on tour.
Yeah, similar to Duffner as well.
When he first made it on tour and he was doing pretty good, I was playing high school golf at the time, and we played Bradenton in the Southeast, and they all had strong grips and shut face positions and short backswings. They all looked like miniatures.
Trying to emulate him.
Absolutely.
Dang.
They're all decent players too.
And what I like about that guy too is he knows the mind. Whenever I hear that guy talk about the mind or just the mental side of the game, he's pretty spot on, man. It's pretty fun to listen to when he's on the broadcast. Because what is he on, ABC or NBC now? He took Johnny Miller's spot?
He took Johnny Miller's spot, yeah.
Yeah, that's
good.
I know, man. I love it. I love listening to him talk about the mental side. It's pretty fun.
He he knew both ends of it, man. He lost the British Open by going bogey. Faldo's,
right.
I think it was Faldo's first major, and then he won a PGA in a playoff over Greg Norman. He won the PGA and he couldn't lift the Wanamaker Trophy. He goes to the doctor 3 weeks later. He's got cancer.
Oh God!
And he came all the way back from cancer and won on tour. I mean, if he would have stayed in his prime, he would have probably won a couple more majors. I mean, he had a golf game that was just made to win a British Open. I mean, the ball flight, how just pierced right through the wind. And to Andy's point, when he hit it, it was a different sound. I'll tell you, the greatest ball striker I ever saw, though, was Greg Norman. Greg Norman took those little skinny divots. He was very shallow, and every ball sounded like it was hitting in the dead center of the club face.
He hit that really high, beautiful shot every time. He was such a great long iron player.
Greg Norman would have been so much a better player today if he could have understood more about his spin rate with his wedges and, had TrackMan and that technology. That would have been probably 10 more wins for him easy.
Yeah, he spun off every green.
Yeah.
I remember he's playing Tour Edition back then. That's why I used it.
Jordan, you remember watching the Como and the Butch interview, right?
Yes.
I mean, so when they were talking, like Butch could not sing Greg Norman's praises enough, dude. Remember that? He's like, he was the best driver. He was the best iron player I've ever taught. Like he was just going on and on about Norman. It was fun. I'm like, really?
Well,
he better than Tiger.
He said he was one of the best he's ever been around, just from top to bottom. And he said, to see him struggle and go through some of the mental meltdowns that he did was obviously very difficult, but he really had a high opinion of just what his abilities were.
Which says a lot because Butch has coached a lot of number ones.
He was a really good wind putter too. He was kind of like Tom Watson. He could make putts in the wind.
The thing about Norman too is, remember, he shot 24 under at TPC Sawgrass and won by 7. The year he loses the Masters to Faldo, after 3 rounds, he's 16 under par. Man, the guy was phenomenal. He had some demons in his head, and I don't know.
Yeah, you wonder if that's still like in his mind. He's like, "Dang, I gave that Masters away."
Well, yeah, every year when they have the Masters and he can't go.
Sounds like Rory.
Well, wasn't it the year that Mize chipped in? He lost. That was the year he lost as well.
87.
Yeah.
So he had
Mize,
the
he was
he had
in
the
the playoffs.
Faldo and the Mize year. That sucks, man.
Yeah. Well,
God bless
86, he loses to Nicholas.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
That's right.
Mize didn't
yes,
play.
sir.
Mize didn't play crappy. I mean, he obviously,
Not
I
sure.
think he shot 67 or something that final round. He just happened to chip in when
God
Norman
bless.
happened to have a lead, right?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, Sevy's in that playoff too. Sevy gets knocked out on the 10th on the first playoff hole, and then Larry chips in on 11 to beat Norman. But Sevy was in that playoff too. That was a really good. That's 87, the year after 86. Another great Masters. I mean, yeah, Norman was incredible. I mean, just incredible ball striker. And Andy's point, a great putter into the wind. He was an incredible player. But,
Well, do you guys remember when he almost won? When he was like, what was it, like 8 years ago? Maybe when he was like mid-60s and he almost won or whatever. Where was
Tom
that?
White.
He was up. No,
he was in
Norman
the
was
British
up there
Open.
too, man.
In the British
Yeah,
Open,
Yeah, Jeff. What
Roger
year was that
Carrington
when he was
won
up
that
there?
one,
Yeah, that was Patty.
Yeah,
He was
because
leading after 3, I think.
yeah, Norman had he married Chris Everett, the tennis player, for like a hot minute, and she was like following him around. I remember that.
Oh
Yeah.
crap! I remember that.
Remember that? The
Holy-
guy was like,
Yeah.
he was in the lead after 3 rounds. It was
That's
crazy.
crazy, dude. That is crazy.
Yeah, it was like
2000.
60.
2007 or something like that.
That was wild, man.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the kind of player he was, man. He could do that, but just I don't know, like a boxer. He got punched in the face so many times. It's almost like he got punch drunk.
Darren, do you have any other questions that you might have for us from our end that might help you?
Yeah, no, one thing that you wanted to talk about was early extension, which I mean, I see basically everyone do, and that, like, my opinion is on it. Like there's certain things that professionals do that amateurs don't, and like if together we can bring someone that's maybe a 20 handicap 50% of the way to that tour position or tour model, then we've done a pretty good job. Or if they get 80% of the way, 90% of the way in certain areas, then that's something that we can use to measure together, I guess, positionally, but also movement wise. So I guess like when I communicate to a new player, I mean, there's certain things I'm looking for in an assessment. And like a lot of other groups that I'm in online, we talk about the TPI model and the evaluation, and the summary that they offer gives players kind of this really negative view on that result. So it creates what we call this nocebo effect, where something's wrong when it's not actually wrong.
Gotcha.
But if you can take that fault, for example, and get them halfway there towards a model, then they can become a better player. It's going to tighten up their dispersion, maybe they hit it further, and handicap goes down, which is another story. I don't think the handicap system sets players up to want to get better.
No, it makes it. Well, I mean, now your handicap is
Especially the new one.
lower. It's lower now because it's only taking your best 8 out of 20. But
Plus the slope and ratings have changed, and they're making if the yardages aren't right, then you might be actually playing a par 66 instead of a par 72.
right.
Stupid.
Question for you, Darren. When it comes to early extension, we see it all the time. Rarely do we see anybody stay in their posture and have proper extension. So I see it mainly just right off the bat, 98% of the time. From a body perspective, what is it that is the main cause for most people that just cannot retain angles in the backswing?
Backswing, I think, is more of a maybe an understanding of the task of what they need to do to get the club going back on the right pattern. But that's something that they can control body wise, because it's happening much more slowly than the downswing. I think if they can control that, then the down's going to get better, even when you add speed in. So it's just a matter of what you're doing there. I think physical causes of that would be tight ankles. So if you tend to have toe bias, that's a big one. So one thing I'll do at the studio is have people walk with their eyes closed, try to stay in place. I'd say 90% of them drift forward because they're toe biased. They don't stay in place. Or very rarely do you see anyone move backwards. So it's that toe bias. Also, hip rotation plays a role. And then I think it comes down to reacting to where the club face is.
Yeah, I the biggest thing that I see, Darren, is obviously I don't see the hips turn very well in the backswing, and then
They lose the sign then.
I'll see the pelvis start
that's a big one
tilted. It starts tilted, and they'll start to turn a little, and then I'll see the pelvis just kind of
Tucked underneath.
droop right at the kind of top of the swing, like you said. It looks like all their pressure's moving towards their toes, and sometimes that can be challenging as a instructor to get them to move correctly, because it's just so different, and that's something they've been doing for so long. That's just their way they move. Very difficult sometimes to change.
Yeah, Darren, I think that's very interesting. You should say that about TPI, because I've thought it a million times. I can never remember giving a screen to somebody where they come out looking halfway decent. And it was like always like, this is wrong, that's wrong, this is wrong, that's wrong. I don't tell people. I just go, okay, great, way to go. Okay, great, way to go. You know, I mean, I like having it as an added value to the lesson, and I think it gives you some knowledge going forward. But if you told these people what was going on, they'd quit right there. They'd walk off.
You failed every test.
That was definitely a mistake I made initially. That was definitely a mistake I made initially. It was like, you just want to tell like everyone what you know. Like, you just want to sound smart. But I mean, it's in order to benefit the player, you have to, the less is better, really.
Yeah.
It's like
I mean, you can collect that data and give it to them. I mean, I offer like a summary of everything that we find. But oftentimes it kind of creates and feeds into that nocebo effect where, it's kind of like, oh, here's where you're at, and here's what we want to get. But I mean, how much of that does the player want to know? I mean, some people are really into that, and that can motivate them to get better. But others, it's like, screw this. I'm not gonna put in that much effort to incrementally improve or maybe lower my handicap by one.
I agree.
Yeah. Where I've seen a big help with TPI is, obviously I've watched you a lot, Darren, and you've taught me a lot of knowledge when it comes to the body and swing. But like, if you see somebody that's doing this little chicken wing at the top and really flat pro wrist, it's usually, I'm like, okay, I probably just need to, let's just quick test that out. And then I'm like, okay, got a little limitation, so we got to work around that. Or where I'm not doing a complete screen every lesson. I just don't have the time to do that.
Well,
And Do it on the fly, baby.
Unless you're doing it like in a boot camp, where you got a multiple lesson package and that's part of it. That's the only time you really do a full screen. And even then, you're not doing a full screen, like you do a couple things to find out, okay, how limited is this person? Like, the hips move and the upper body doesn't, where you cross your arms across your chest. I have never, ever, ever had any student pass that, ever. They cannot separate, they can't do it. And, same going the opposite way. Move your chest and keep your hips quiet. They can't do that either.
It's so funny to see how they try to move their hips without their upper body, isn't it?
Oh,
we should just get a video of that and put that on YouTube and get millions of hits.
But you think about it, I mean, unless they were a professional baseball player or some kind of super athlete, they're not people that have been in office jobs their whole lives. They're never going to, can't say never, because if they worked out and they did the proper things, maybe they could get some improvement in it, but they're never going to come to you and be able to do it because, like if you sit in a chair for X amount of hours every day of your life for 30 years, man, those muscles forget about it. It ain't going to happen.
Yeah, you're probably not going to get back to that 100%. I mean, if you can make some incremental gains, then that's available. I think what we talked about was maybe someone who hadn't played any sports growing up and then in their 50s or 60s come to you. They want to start playing. They want to start playing golf, and they've got a swing speed of 60. I mean, there's only so much you're gonna be able to work with there.
You wake up in cold sweats about that. I mean, I taught, I taught probably 50 to 100 ladies at Del Toro over 15 years that they'd never played golf. They were housewives. They'd never played sports because when they were going to school, they didn't even have PE. They went to home ec. And, they had no athleticism, but they wanted to play golf. And basically the 9-hole group at Del Toro, we called it long range putting. I mean, they get up there and they just dribble it along the ground and dribble it along the ground and dribble it up to the green, and then they, knock it in for 8 or 9. But they had a great time. They're having fun and they were socializing, which is what it was all about. But
that's because they're a drinking community with the golfing problem.
Yeah, well, but them ever getting it in the air, forget about it. That ain't gonna happen.
Darren,
how do you motivate them to get better? I mean, in a population that really doesn't give a shit.
Yeah,
it's hard.
Very difficult. But you know what? They would come to clinics and they would participate and they want private lessons. And you can ask Newman. I mean, Newman, dude, he was doing like 5 to 10 lessons a day. And those ladies loved him. But you go out and watch him, and it was a nice 6-putt, from 170 yards. The ball never got it, and the ball never got in the air, and it was like 30 yards at a time. Dink, dink.
Have you guys ever fired a player?
Yes.
I have, yes.
No.
I had one guy get me so pissed one time that I wasn't rude to him, but I was like, hey man, he's been coming to me for 2 years. He's a left-handed guy. He would fight in every lesson, said he read this in golf, this and that. And he had like the oldest clubs ever. And the guy had cash. I mean, it's one thing if somebody's got old clubs and they're broke. Okay, I get that, man. You're broke. These are the clubs you got at Goodwill or wherever. Great. I'm glad you're playing the game. But when you got, when you go on a around the world cruise and you got Jack Nicklaus clubs that you bought at fucking Walmart and you're complaining about your game, go get yourself some fucking clubs, you moron. I still get pissed about it. Thinking about it, there's this guy and like an hour of my life gone because his clubs are horrible and he wanted to fight on everything and his grip was horrible. And I'd say, okay, let's work on your grip. Same lesson for 2 years. 2 years. So finally,
I'd say that's probably what drives me most nuts is someone who comes in and kind of wants to dictate what they're working on based on what they saw on TV or read that week.
Because I mean, they're paying you to learn something, so why would they try to tell you what to do?
So,
Yeah.
the last time I had him, it was before he went up north to his summer home on the beach in fucking Maine. Can't afford new clubs, but he got a summer home on the beach in Maine. He tells me, he goes, "Oh, maybe we'll get together next year." I said, I don't think so. I said, I'm going to produce my lesson book, and I just don't think, like, maybe you want to try one of the other guys here. And then he saw me about 2 months ago. I came out of the snack bar, and there he was. I'm like, oh. He goes, "Hey, can we get together for a lesson?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay.
Bobby's free.
Sure, give me a call."
Give me a call. We'll fix something. We'll work something out. Hey, Darren. Quick question. This will be the last one. We'll call it a night. When it comes to the limited people or people that obviously can't stay in their posture, one of the things that everybody can do, because your arms and your shoulders are so mobile, is you can learn how to move your arms independently than the rest of your body. So wouldn't you say that, at least for me, that is where I found we can create some speed, even though we don't have a lot of help from the body, because a lot of people don't realize how much their arms do move independently from their actual body, and how much you can learn how to separate that from your body during the swing. It's the kind of reverse of what most players do. They try to overuse their upper body and not use their arms.
Do you think so like what role does a lower body play in the golf swing? Like, does that just make somebody more consistent? Is it hard to be consistent with just the arms if you were just to swing like that?
Yeah, so let's just say I have a player that horrible mobility, can't really turn a lot. First thing I would do is bring their feet close together and tell them to play with their feet close the rest of their life. And I'd start teaching them how to hit balls with their feet together, using their hands and arms and hands and arms. Obviously, the body's going to be in there a little bit. I mean, it's not going to be complete. It's not going to be completely shut down, but I bet it's moving better than it was before.
It keeps it from sliding, and so they don't get way behind the ball.
But
Yeah.
I think learning how to, get the arms moving a little bit separately than the body starts to develop a sequence and a pattern that can create some squareness at impact and compression.
Yeah, no, Jeff said, before, I think you went to a lesson he said, put your feet together and hit balls from there. It was the best you ever struck it in your life.
Yeah.
He told you to do that for a month, didn't he?
You can't play golf.
No, Norman Head, Kenny Perry's teacher, when I was working with him. What the hell's this cat doing? Anyway, I go to Norman and he goes, "Here's what I want you to do." This was April. He goes, "You're not going to play golf till the middle of May. Every chance you get, go to the range and hit 8 irons with your feet together, and you can start off on a tee, and then you can graduate to on the ground." And I did it. I didn't play golf for a month. Oh, come on, go play. Nope, I did it, and it took me from like a mid to low 80 shooter to a mid to low 70 shooter, like overnight. And when you look back on it, he centered my swing, he shallowed my plane. He did a bunch of stuff in there, and, we worked from there. But that was the beginning. Feet together, feet together, feet together, feet together, feet together, feet together. 8 irons, one, like every day that I could, 120 balls, go pick them up. Bobby don't know anything about this. Back in the day, you used to have to shag your own balls.
I did
baby.
that, actually, in Brooksville.
Oh, that's true. You grew up in the woods. Yeah, so you
We didn't have water ranges there.
You have to shag your own balls, and I'd hit those, go shag them, and usually twice. And I try to do that 4 days a week. And my buddy Mike, a couple of you guys have met him, he'd be riding by in the car. "You gonna play?" I'm like, "No, man, I can't play. Give me a couple more weeks." And then I came out and I played in the Middle Tennessee Open. I shot 70-74 and almost won it at 16 years old, and then almost won another tournament, and that kind of like changed my whole trajectory in golf. That one little change.
And the thing is you were a good student. You actually listened to your coach.
Well, yeah. Well, I was struggling. Like I had the shanks for one thing, and either I'd shank it or I'd hit these 70-yard super hooks. And obviously I'm goat humping the shit out of it. My hips moving out towards the ball. You look back at it, and my pass probably 7 or 8 right. So, like, okay, here's what we're gonna do, and it wound up changing my whole golf swing. And actually, at that point in my life, I went from hitting draws and hooks to hitting a cut.
Cool.
With distance.
With more power. How much power did you gain after that month on your clubs?
Probably a club, maybe a club and a half. And I probably, at that time, was hitting a ping wood, basically off the deck. I mean, teeing it up about just above the ground. It could hit that 270, 280.
Dang. Wow.
And like I was hitting like big looping hooks 240, 230 before that. So it changed my entire golf game. So I mean, you can change, especially with kids, you can change them if you can get them to buy in 100%. Okay, this is what we're going to do, and you're going to do it. And if you do it, you're going to get better. Adults don't always want to buy into that. Like some of them will, like Bobby buys into doing the work and doing the changes. But
she went from shooting 112 and 15 to 88. And
yeah, that's pretty cool.
In 10 weeks.
She was in contention to win a club championship. I mean, she goes from a 30 handicap to almost winning the ladies club championship. I mean, and like Jerry Butler, I've been working with Jerry for years. And, here's a professional athlete. Professional athlete understands when the coach says, we're going to work on this to change your pattern, he gets it. Most of these yahoos that come to you, they're looking for some Band-Aid.
Yeah, they think they can hit one bucket and they should have it. And if they don't, I'm done with that. I'm going back to what I did before.
Your lessons of the practice.
You got to change patterns in the swing. You got to change the motion, and you just can't change a pattern of motion, within 20, 50, 100 balls. I mean, remember that thing? Remember the old IBM thing, Droid? The 4,000 times? Yeah.
Yep. They did a
4-digit code.
It was an 8-digit code, and it was IBM. They all had to type it in hundreds of times a day. They timed them, how fast they did it, how accurately they did it. Then this research company wanted to see if they gave them all new codes, how long and how many times it would take before they got to the same time and accuracy. And it was over 3,200 before they were back at the same speed and accuracy.
Right. Wow. So, I tell people that in a lesson. Hey, this is what this is about. You want to change your pattern, you got to work at it. You got to do the work. If you're looking for something that's just going to get you a couple of strokes on your buddies, well, we could change your ball position a little bit, or maybe change the club face
or your tempo, or
your tempo, and that might help you for next Saturday. But you ain't going to be able to hold on to that shit.